17. Early morning ATM fail. Early one morning in January 2023, a stolen red Jeep backed up to the entrance of a gas station in Blaine, Washington. One of the two men inside the Jeep exited the vehicle and tied a tow strap to the rear bumper and the gas station's front door. The man behind the wheel then stepped on the gas and yanked the door open. Using the tow strap, the thieves pulled an ATM out of the store and then smashed into it repeatedly in an apparent attempt to break it open. Surveillance footage showed the Jeep driving in reverse and smashing into the machine repeatedly. But the suspects were unable to access the cash inside, and eventually they gave up. The stolen Jeep was found abandoned in the woods later on that day, and the thieves remain at large despite the Whatcom County Sheriff's appeal to the public for help identifying the perpetrators. 16. Caitlyn Armstrong. In one of the highest-profile criminal cases to grace American news headlines in recent years, a 35-year-old yoga instructor named Caitlyn Armstrong is accused of fatally shooting her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend in a jealous rage. During a visit to Austin, Texas for a race in 2022, 25-year-old professional cyclist Mariah Wilson met up with her ex-boyfriend Colin Strickland, who was dating Armstrong at the time. After going for a swim and a burger, Strickland dropped Wilson off at the apartment where she was staying, and that's when Wilson was shot by a home intruder just minutes later. Shortly after Wilson's murder, Armstrong sold her Jeep and flew to Costa Rica using her sister's passport. And she was already gone by the time law enforcement obtained a warrant for her arrest. Surveillance footage from the night of the murder appears to show Armstrong's Jeep circling the property where Mariah was staying, and shell casings found at the scene reportedly matched a gun found at Armstrong's home, so she quickly rose to the top of the suspect list. By the time U.S. Marshals picked her up 43 days later, Armstrong had gotten a nose job and dyed her hair to alter her appearance. She was then extradited to the United States, where she's remained in custody while awaiting trial on a murder charge. As Armstrong's trial approached during the fall of 2023, she made a last-ditch attempt at freedom by running from a guard who was escorting her from a medical appointment. Footage showed the accused killer making a run for it in her striped jail outfit. One of the officers escorting Armstrong chased after her and pulled her down as she tried to scale a 6-foot fence. They both fell, and Armstrong quickly ran off again, but she was captured about a mile away. Jail security video footage reportedly showed that the high-profile defendant had worked out vigorously leading up to the failed flight from custody, further indicating that she prepared extensively for her escape attempt. She also allegedly fashioned a device out of metal and dental floss to free herself from handcuffs. By the time officers caught up to her, she'd already removed her jail uniform and freed herself from one of her handcuffs. According to court documents, Armstrong may have planned her botched escape well ahead of time. She put in a medical complaint about a leg injury, which enabled her to avoid being shackled when she was taken to a doctor's appointment. 15. Lorraine Alvarado and Cassandra Alvarez. A 101-year-old Las Vegas resident and World War II veteran named Herbert Muskin was stopped at a red light one evening in 2023 with his wife when a stolen car smashed into his vehicle during a high-speed police chase. He died a month later, leaving behind his wife of 67 years, Sherry Muskin, who survived with injuries. The stolen car was allegedly driven by Lorraine Alvarado and Cassandra Alvarez, who were both eluding law enforcement after robbing a sporting goods store. And after reaching speeds in excess of 80 miles per hour and crashing the car, the suspects attempted to flee on foot. Body cam footage showed Alvarado pointing a gun at a pursuing officer, who returned fire. She survived her injury, and both she and Alvarez face enhanced charges of murder with the use of a deadly weapon and battery with the use of a deadly weapon resulting in substantial bodily harm. Alvarado faces additional charges for stealing the getaway car and pointing a gun at an officer. Alvarez, who drove the getaway car, faces additional counts for burglary of a business, possession of a firearm, failing to stop for the police, failing to stop at the scene of a crash involving injury or death, and reckless driving. 14. Cheryl Henderson. By the time sheriff's deputies arrived at the scene of a hit-and-run in Flagler County, Florida in late September 2023, the suspect had fled with the victim clinging to the hood of her SUV. According to law enforcement, 76-year-old Cheryl K. Henderson and a male driver were involved in a minor crash. But instead of waiting for the cops to arrive, Henderson allegedly sped off, hitting the other driver as she peeled away from the scene in her silver SUV. The man held onto the hood of the vehicle for dear life as it reached speeds of over 50 miles per hour. Luckily though, the victim walked away with only minor injuries. Henderson made it about 2 miles down the road before a driver who'd witnessed the hit and run caught up to her and forced her off the road. Police arrested Henderson on suspicion of leaving the scene of a crash and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. 13. David Converse Harris. In late October 2023, a suspect later identified as 35-year-old David Converse Harris entered a Brighton bank branch in Salt Lake City, Utah, and handed the teller a note demanding cash and warning the employee not to call the authorities. He then summoned an Uber to a nearby video game store and took the stolen cash to his home. The Uber driver later told police that he noticed that Harris's hands were covered in red ink and saw smoke coming from his pocket. A dye pack that the teller had inserted with the money had exploded and was found on the ground where the Uber picked Harris up. 2 days later, police located the suspect at a motel. He fled in a stolen SUV and led the cops on a high-speed chase spanning multiple counties, which was eventually called off for safety reasons. Harris allegedly robbed a Chase bank in Mill Creek later that day, and much like the first robbery, he handed the teller a note demanding money. Police caught up with him again, and another chase ensued. But the pursuit finally ended when Harris crashed the stolen vehicle into a road barrier. He attempted to flee on foot, but didn't make it very far. According to court documents, he was behaving erratically. His eyes were red and bulging, he was unable to stand up, and he appeared to be high on something. The suspect is now facing both state and federal charges, but it's not his first brush with the law. Harris was on probation for 5 robbery convictions when he was apprehended for his most recent crime spree. In early 2022, law enforcement put out an appeal to the public for help locating Harris, who was wanted in connection with 4 aggravated robberies at cell phone stores in Salt Lake City and a hardware store in Taylorsville. He also has numerous DUI convictions on his record. After being captured for the store robberies, Harris told police that he planned to leave the state of Utah and never be seen again. But as we now know, that never happened. 12. Jose Orta. A lot of people are so desperate to avoid jail time that they'll swim across a river or lake in their attempts to elude law enforcement. In a bizarre case that occurred in 2016, 46-year-old Jose Luis Orta was riding as a passenger in a pickup truck in Houston, Texas when police pulled the vehicle over. The driver was taken into custody on felony warrants and suspicion of driving a stolen vehicle. And in the meantime, Orta slid into the driver's seat and sped away. During the 10-mile pursuit that followed, Orta pointed a shotgun out the window at officers and fired several shots. He crossed through pastures and across medians, sped through construction zones, crashed through 2 fences and struck a tree, and then took a dirt road that ended at the Brazos River. Orta entered the river with the intention to cross it and shed all his clothing except his underwear. But he couldn't make it across, and he was also unable to climb out of the river because he kept getting stuck in the mud. It took police an hour to pull Orta out of the river and up a steep embankment to safety. And by the time he was rescued, he was covered head to toe in mud. During an interview following Orta's arrest, his father told Click 2 Houston that he thought his son's behavior was stupid as can be and that it's impossible to escape the police. He confirmed that his son struggled with drug problems and was on parole at the time of the high-speed chase. Speaking exclusively with ABC 13 from jail, Orta said that he noticed guns in the truck during the traffic stop and panicked because of his parole. He told the station that he was trying to reach a property near the river where there was a pastor he trusted and wanted to talk to. Inside the truck, police found shotguns and drugs. They also found bags of methamphetamine and cocaine along the riverbank, which Orta denied belonged to him. But regardless of whether or not he wanted to admit to his wrongdoings, he was charged with evading arrest, gun possession, and 2 drug charges. Orta expressed regret over the incident and how it affected his family, and said that he wished it had never happened. 11. Jamie Young and Jennifer Kaufman. Law enforcement in Seminole County, Florida, received some unexpected help pursuing a fleeing suspect from a herd of cows during a foot chase in 2018. The pursuit began in Stanford, where police spotted a stolen SUV being driven by 46-year-old Jamie Young. An attempt to pull the vehicle over then turned into a high-speed chase into neighboring Brevard County, where Young crashed the SUV into a stop sign and landed in a ditch. And in an attempt to evade arrest, Young and her passenger, Jennifer Kaufman, fled the scene on foot. Young was found hiding in some nearby bushes while Kaufman ran across a cow pasture. An aerial surveillance team had no trouble tracking her whereabouts as a herd of around 20 cows ran after her. In an audio recording, the helicopter's pilot could be heard telling someone on the ground that it looked like the cows might attack the fleeing woman and instructing the police to follow the cows. Luckily for her though, Kaufman managed to cross the field without being gored. She jumped over a fence and was soon found hiding in a bush. Both women were charged with drug possession, resisting arrest, trespassing, and petty theft. 10. Timothy Arif. In 2017, a boat owner in Astoria, Oregon, pressed criminal charges against 28-year-old Timothy Arif for allegedly trying to break into his vessel. Ron Migjan, who was sleeping on his boat at the time, awoke to the sound of someone jiggling the lock. The suspect, who was on probation for unlawful use of a motor vehicle, had fled by the time police arrived. According to authorities, Arif had stopped checking in with his probation officer following a recent burglary arrest. Law enforcement then returned to the scene about an hour later when Arif returned to the area. The suspect was sitting in a pickup truck when an officer attempted to approach the vehicle. But as soon as he saw the cop, he shifted the truck in gear and sped off. He accelerated to 45 miles per hour and then drove off a nearby pier. Arif exited the sinking truck and began swimming towards a nearby island. He was only about 2/3 of the way to dry land when he began struggling in the frigid water and began swimming back to the dock, where employees from a nearby marine construction company tossed him a life jacket and a flotation ring. The workers pulled Arif out of the water and he was taken to hospital, where he was treated for hypothermia and other minor injuries. Authorities charged the suspect with offensive littering, first-degree burglary, attempt to elude police with a vehicle, and reckless driving. But he was also hit with charges of interfering with a peace officer, third-degree escape, second-degree criminal trespass, and driving while under the influence of methamphetamine. As part of a plea deal, Arif pleaded no contest to a handful of charges and received a 1.5-year prison sentence, which has to run concurrently with a 3.5-year sentence he was already serving for 2 burglary convictions. He still had a year left on his sentence when he walked off the job during a prison work detail in 2020. Arif was located and returned to custody a short while later. 9. Jerome Prince. While serving a 1-year jail sentence for cocaine possession in San Bernardino County, California in 1989, Jerome Prince scaled 2 12-foot barbed wire fences and began looking for a ride to the San Fernando Valley. He approached 25-year-old Johnny Ray Johnson, who was standing outside a nearby home, and explained that he was trying to get to his home in North Hollywood. Johnson, who was a member of the local faction of the Crips gang, agreed to give Prince a ride in exchange for pay. They were then joined by 2 of Johnson's friends who were also Crips. During the hour-long drive, Prince realized that the men were gang members. He didn't have the money to pay for the ride, and he knew his inability to pay would not go over well. So, instead of being dropped off at his home, Prince asked the driver to take him to an apartment building across the street from the North Hollywood police station. He said that he'd go grab the cash from a friend who lived in the building, but the Crips wanted to go with him. And when Prince tried refusing to let them come along, Johnson pulled out a gun and pulled the trigger, shooting a bullet to the ground. A struggle ensued between the two men, and Prince was shot in the stomach in the process. He then narrowly dodged a bullet to the head by blocking his face with his arms, and the gangsters fled the scene. Prince approached the police station across the street for help and collapsed at the front door. He survived though, and ended up serving a 3-year prison sentence for the escape. Johnson and one of the other suspects, David Engleton, were captured that day, while a third suspect named Keith Slaughter remained at large. Based on news reports, all 3 suspects appear to have been arrested for multiple gang-related crimes in the years following the shooting. 8. Douglas Haggerty. Police officers in Taunton, Massachusetts, were conducting a traffic stop one evening in September 2023 when a man with no connection to the driver pulled up in a Honda sedan and began shouting at the cops. The officers told him to leave, and he angrily sped off. But a short while later, another officer observed the same car driving erratically and pulled the vehicle over. The driver, 35-year-old Douglas Haggerty, initially complied but sped off during the traffic stop, nearly hitting the officer as he fled the scene. During the high-speed chase that ensued, Haggerty allegedly struck at least one police cruiser, and the pursuit finally ended when he crashed into a home, which just happened to belong to one of his relatives, and ran inside. As officers entered the house, Haggerty brandished a knife and swung it at them. He stabbed 5 cops, including one who was airlifted to a hospital after being slashed in the face, neck, and back. Before more damage could be done though, the police tased him and took him into custody, and thankfully all of his victims survived. Haggerty faces multiple charges, including 3 counts of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, 2 counts of malicious damage to a motor vehicle, and 1 count each of failure to stop for police, reckless operation of a motor vehicle, resisting arrest, and armed assault with intent to murder. His stepbrother David told CBS News that the suspect suffers from schizophrenia and needs mental help. A psychologist who performed a court-ordered mental evaluation said that Haggerty talked to him about flat earth conspiracy theories and the real truth being kept from the public. The expert testified that the defendant appeared competent and capable of understanding the court process, but nevertheless recommended further evaluation. According to the most recent updates on the case, Haggerty was hospitalized for a secondary 20-day assessment. 7. Desmonavi Bell and William Gaston. In August 2017, 2 Dallas teenagers decided it would be a good idea to steal a Lamborghini. So they approached a valet outside a hotel, blinded the employee with a fire extinguisher, and nabbed the keys to a $300,000 Huracan. They drove several miles before law enforcement located the stolen car and gave chase, and the pursuit continued for 6 more miles until the suspects reached an interstate. One of the car's tires blew and the front fender came off. The Lambo stalled, most likely because the suspects didn't know how to operate a manual transmission, and then caught fire on the side of the road. Police arrested 19-year-old Desmonavi Bell and 18-year-old William Gaston for auto theft, which is typically punishable by a prison sentence of up to 2 years in Texas. But because the Lamborghini was worth more than $30,000, the crime was upgraded to a 3rd-degree felony, punishable by up to 10 years in prison if convicted. During a jailhouse interview with local station KHOU, Bell admitted to his role in the crime. He said that it was Williams' idea to steal the car, but that he went along with it because it's a Lamborghini. Bell claimed that law enforcement would have never caught up with him and his co-conspirator if the vehicle's tire hadn't popped, although the car's mechanical problems suggest that the driver didn't know how to work the clutch. When asked if he regretted his actions, Bell acted confused, saying "what for?" and explaining that he was just trying to make some money. He said that he planned to take the Lamborghini to a chop shop and sell it to the owner of the business for $10,000. But despite his blatant lack of remorse for his alleged actions, Bell said that he didn't plan to steal a car again, and that it was a one-time thing. Unfortunately, there have been no updates on the case since 2017, so the outcome's unclear. 6. Deanna Lusk and Dustin Holliday. In July 2014, a witness spotted a pair of burglars who were accused of committing a crime spree across East Texas and called 911. Alto Police Sergeant Jake Carter quickly located an SUV matching the description of a vehicle that the suspects were seen leaving the crime scene in. So, he attempted to pull the vehicle over, but the driver sped off on a nearby highway. During the chase, the SUV drove off the road and into a field. Carter followed as the getaway vehicle proceeded into a muddy ravine and began heading back toward the highway. But the SUV struck a culvert and went airborne before landing upright on the highway, blowing out all the tires and causing the rims to bend. One of the suspects, 29-year-old Dustin Holliday, allegedly tried to flee the scene on foot, while 35-year-old Deanna Lusk stayed by the disabled vehicle and cooperated with police. Carter later told the Jacksonville Progress that he chased Holliday for roughly 1,800 feet before apprehending him as he tried to enter a home. Then, during a search for the totaled SUV, police found stolen property connected to recent burglaries in 4 counties, along with several grams of methamphetamine and a gun. The license plates on the SUV were stolen, and the vehicle had been spray-painted black and turquoise in an attempt to conceal its true appearance. In the end, Holliday and Lusk were charged with 2 counts of burglary, after investigators concluded that they'd targeted 2 homes in the area. 5. Jose Espinosa. In early 2015, 23-year-old Jose Espinosa fled from a stolen car parked near his home in Madera, California. And a short while later, he tried returning to his home with his face spray-painted black in an apparent attempt to disguise himself. In addition to the disguise not being very convincing, Espinosa tried to hide against a white wall in his yard, which didn't exactly help him camouflage himself. Needless to say, police quickly caught up with him and charged him with receiving stolen property. A can of black spray paint was also found in his possession and was submitted as evidence. This wasn't the first time a wanted person tried to alter their appearance in a ridiculous way. While searching for the suspects of a home burglary in 2009, police in Carroll, Iowa, pulled over a vehicle occupied by 23-year-old Matthew McNally and 20-year-old Joey Miller. Officers were shocked to see that the men had covered their faces in black permanent marker. According to detectives, the pair targeted a specific home because one of them believed that his girlfriend had cheated on him with the man who lived there. Police Chief Jeff Kaler said that alcohol was thought to be involved, and the attempted break-in may have been an impulsive drunk decision that the suspects made in hopes of scaring the resident. The case against McNally and Miller was eventually dropped due to a lack of evidence. In all fairness, the men were unarmed when the police pulled them over. There were no signs of them actually entering the intended victim's apartment, and nobody was injured. The biggest clue against them was the fact that their faces were covered in Sharpie, but apparently it wasn't enough to prove the case. 4. Christopher Clay Rudd. 35-year-old Christopher Clay Rudd was waiting to see a judge in Spanish Fork, Utah in 2018 when he decided to make a run for it. He'd recently been arrested for theft, being a felon in possession of a weapon, and drug-related charges when he was accused of skipping out on court-mandated rehab. CCTV footage showed Rudd walking out of the courtroom in handcuffs and hurling himself over a second-story railing. He fell 20 feet to the first floor, where a court deputy attempted to break his fall. Rudd's head landed squarely on the deputy's shoe, which may have spared him from life-threatening injuries. He was still hurt pretty badly, but he survived after receiving treatment for injuries to his head and hip. It's unclear whether Rudd jumped over the railing because he was in a hurry or if he had some other reason for doing it, and he reportedly caught additional charges for the incident. Courthouse spokesperson told the press that staff were reviewing the positioning of their security officers throughout the building, and that inmates would be required to wear leg restraints moving forward. 3. Sergio Brown. In September 2023, 73-year-old Myrtle Brown and her son, 35-year-old former NFL player Sergio Brown, were reported missing by concerned relatives. And sadly, during a search for the two, police found Myrtle's body near a creek behind her Maywood, Illinois home. She was wrapped in a sheet and her neck was snapped. The Cook County Medical Examiner classified the senior citizen's death as a homicide. 2 days later, Sergio appeared to mock the missing persons report in a bizarre Instagram post. He said that he believed his mother was on vacation, accused the FBI of trying to kidnap him, and described his mother's murder as fake news. Meanwhile, DNA from blood found on the porch of the Browns' home and underneath Myrtle's fingernails turned up as a match to Sergio. Investigators also found Ajax cleaner in the bathroom drain, as if someone had been trying to get rid of evidence. Authorities then issued an arrest warrant against Sergio, who was in Mexico at the time. He was allegedly using his mother's credit cards to fund his travels and had stolen her iPad and several other belongings. Carlos Cortez, who lives in the neighborhood where Sergio and Myrtle shared a home, told local station WBBM that Sergio hadn't been acting right in the months leading up to his mother's death. The neighbor reportedly gave investigators doorbell camera footage that appeared to show Sergio burning Myrtle's clothes in a bonfire shortly before he vanished. 2 weeks after the discovery of Myrtle's body, Brown posted footage of himself partying and dancing with women in Tulum, seemingly without a care in the world. And shortly thereafter, law enforcement confronted him during a flight to Colombia. Brown reportedly threw punches and screamed that he was being kidnapped as he was taken into custody. He was then extradited to Illinois, where he remains in custody on suspicion of first-degree murder and concealment of a body. 2. Cody Howard and Tana Jacobson. While awaiting a criminal court hearing in Chehalis, Washington one day in 2018, 28-year-old Cody Howard and 22-year-old Tana Jacobson ran from the courtroom while handcuffed. Both detainees were facing a maximum punishment of 30 days in jail for driving with a suspended license. It would have been easier to square away their cases, complete whatever punishment they received and put the matter behind them, but they were reportedly experiencing the very beginnings of heroin withdrawal and were desperate to avoid being sick. The judge, R.W. Buzzard, immediately shed his robe and chased after the pair. At the very beginning of the pursuit, Howard tripped over his oversized orange jail sandal and fell, but he managed to get up and continue running. He and Jacobson made it down 4 flights of stairs with Buzzard trailing behind them. But right as they reached the building's exit, Buzzard tackled Howard and Jacobson was captured a few blocks away. Buzzard later told local station Como that he repeatedly shouted at the young men to stop, but they were making things worse by running. The incident came just months after the judge wrestled a combative litigant to the floor during a civil trial, making him a local celebrity of sorts for his willingness to intervene in situations that judges normally leave to courtroom deputies. During his Como interview, Buzzard said that the prior scuffle taught him that grappling in a judge's robe is very restrictive, which is why he ditched his robe when he chased after Howard and Jacobson. In the end, both men were charged with second-degree escape, and because of his criminal history, Howard was sentenced to 6 years behind bars, while Jacobson received a 1-year prison sentence. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Danelo Calante. Residents in southeastern Pennsylvania were on edge for nearly 2 weeks in September 2023 when convicted murderer Danelo Calante escaped from the Chester County prison after being sentenced to life for killing his ex-girlfriend. The 34-year-old had been labeled an escape risk, and staff had received tips that Calante was planning an escape, yet he managed to find an opportunity to scale a perimeter wall and bypass the razor wire at the top. As many as 500 federal, state, and local members of law enforcement participated in the ensuing manhunt. On several occasions, they believed they were closing in on Calante, only to have him slip out of the containment area. Fugitive stayed one step ahead of the authorities, despite being spotted multiple times as he navigated through the wilderness, stealing guns, vehicles, and food along the way. Calante is extremely dangerous. In 2021, he stabbed 33-year-old Deborah Brandao to death inside her home. The Brazilian national was captured while attempting to flee Mexico with plans to proceed to his home country, where he's wanted for murder. According to authorities, Calante also fired 6 bullets into a man named Volta Junior Moreira dos Reis in Figueirópolis over a car repair debt. During his time on the run following his 2023 jail escape, he hoped to steal a vehicle and flee to Canada. But surviving in the woods was difficult, and it was only a matter of time before his luck ran out. On the 13th day of the manhunt, a helicopter detected a heat signal indicating a possible human presence in the forest below. Police moved in on Calante 8 hours later after waiting out a storm and caught him trying to crawl away unnoticed with a rifle in hand. He was apprehended with the help of a canine and surrendered peacefully once he knew that he was caught. Calante told investigators that he considered surrendering at one point after going 3 days without eating. He said that he slept during the day and only moved at night, drank water from a stream, and stole a pair of boots after footprints left behind by his jail sandals confirmed that it passed through an area being searched by the police. Following his capture, Calante was transferred to a high-security prison to begin serving his life sentence. And he'll be required to attend court hearings for the murder charge in Brazil via video chat.
Number 10. Sam Helena. Like many others who saw the opportunity to make some extra money from home, London Metropolitan Police Officer Sam Helena set up an OnlyFans page, where subscribers paid a monthly fee for access to steamy content. But the police force wasn't okay with her moonlighting as a nude model. By then, Helena had already been spoken to by her superiors for a raunchy video she had posted 2 years earlier, which featured her in her work uniform. But she apparently crossed a line with the OnlyFans page, which played on her day job with a naughty officer theme. Some officers reportedly supported Helena when she fell under scrutiny for her off-duty behavior. But police force officials concluded that she damaged the agency's reputation and suspended her. Shortly after that, she quit the force. Number 9. Leverne Scandal. Most people have never heard of the small city of Leverne, Tennessee until early 2023. That was when its police department made national news for a salacious scandal involving at least 8 of its officers and the police chief. It all started in late 2022, when word leaked to the city's mayor that a married 26-year-old officer named Megan Hall had inappropriate contact with multiple colleagues. There was also a rumor about a so-called Girls Gone Wild party at an officer's house. An internal investigation found that Hall had intimate encounters and/or exchanged nude photos with at least 7 male officers, including both on and off duty and on city property. Some officers initially denied the misconduct, and a few of them conspired to lie during questioning, including Hall. She eventually gave a 61-page confession detailing games of strip Uno, foot fetish photos, and group activity, which she tried unsuccessfully to get her police officer husband Jedediah to join in on. She explained during questioning that her marriage was falling apart and said that she just cracked and then it kind of got out of hand. 5 officers were fired, including Hall, and 3 were suspended. A third-party investigation revealed that Chief Burrell Chip Davis had a burner phone containing photos, videos, and text messages, proving he knew about the misconduct before the internal investigation began. He denied any prior knowledge of the affairs until he was confronted with the conversations proving otherwise. Davis was fired, marking the latest twist in a seemingly endless scandal that has gotten increasingly shocking with every turn. Number 8. Welden Drayton. In 2018, prosecutors in Long Island, New York, accused a Suffolk County police officer of burning down abandoned houses to show off his firefighting skills and rise through the ranks at the Central Islip Fire Department. 34-year-old Welden Drayton Jr. was a volunteer captain when he allegedly co-conspired with fellow firefighter Stephen Hernandez to set the fires so they could be the first to respond and build their credibility within the department. Authorities charged the pair with arson, leading to Drayton's suspension from the police force and delaying the start of Hernandez's career with the FDNY in New York City. The trial was plagued by issues with the evidence, as well as inconsistent testimony from witnesses, detectives, and cooperating accomplices. In an unconventional move that's rarely seen in American courtrooms, the judge dismissed the case mid-trial at the request of both the defense and the prosecution. Drayton was cleared entirely of any wrongdoing, and the charges against Hernandez would be dismissed as long as he stayed out of trouble for 6 months. Hernandez was now free to pursue his FDNY career, and Drayton was reinstated to the police force. Number 7. Richard Best. One day in 2020, a homeless man was accused of dropping his pants inside a Coral Springs, Florida bank. Officer Richard Best responded to the scene along with 3 other officers. He was considered the primary responding officer, yet he cleared the scene and let the suspect go, only for the department to receive calls about the same person pulling his pants down on a roadside and throwing things at cars later that day. Best had allegedly failed to run a background check on the suspect, a known predator who failed to register properly for his past crimes as required. He claimed that he had run the check, but that nothing suspicious had turned up. His superior said that if he were telling the truth, he would have discovered the suspect's failure to register, and they criticized Best for failing to utilize proper protocol when it comes to dealing with the homeless population. He was also accused of failing to properly fill out paperwork or ask the alleged victim for her version of what happened, or if she wanted to press charges. According to Best, it was his understanding that she didn't want to pursue action against the suspect. When the department alleged that he cleared the investigation so he could get lunch with his co-workers, Best admitted to having lunch plans, but adamantly insisted that he didn't rush through the call to go eat. And it wasn't the first time that he fell under investigation at his job. In 2016, he was accused of repeatedly failing to fully stop at a particular stop sign. After the more recent incident, he was fired from his job. He fought the decision in court and was ultimately reinstated in exchange for agreeing to retire early. In addition to receiving more than $44,000 in back pay, he'll collect a full pension. Both Best and the department agreed that he could have done a better job handling the call. The city did not admit to any wrongdoing and said that it reached an agreement with Best to avoid the uncertainties and costs of moving forward with formal proceedings. Number 6. Patrick Kelly. While responding to a report about a domestic incident in Vieira, Florida in late 2022, Brevard County Sheriff's deputies found themselves in a standoff with 39-year-old Cocoa police officer Patrick Kelly. They were called to Kelly's house regarding a dispute between him and a woman who worked as an officer at the same agency. Kelly allegedly refused to exit the house and fired several shots inside the home. Several hours went by before he surrendered without further incident. Luckily, no one was injured. The 15-year veteran of the Cocoa Police Department was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon involving domestic violence, discharging a firearm, shooting into or throwing deadly missiles into a dwelling, using a firearm while under the influence of alcoholic beverages, culpable negligence, and resisting arrest with violence. He was previously arrested for felony domestic violence in 2015, but the case was dropped and he was allowed to remain on the force. Kelly remains behind bars and suspended without pay pending termination while the case proceeds in court. The judge overseeing the matter denied his request for bail, citing concerns for the safety of the community, the female officer involved in the incident, and law enforcement in general. At number 5, Albert Murray. In early 2023, the Vice and Trafficking Unit of the Prince George's County Police Department in Maryland received a report about suspected prostitution at a hotel in Camp Springs. According to the report, the hotel's manager observed numerous male visitors coming to and from a specific room and waiting in the lobby. While waiting, the men would receive a call, head up to the room, and leave within half an hour. During an investigation, a Greenbelt Police Department cruiser was seen pulling into the hotel's parking lot far away from the front door. According to documents obtained by the Washington Post, the driver was identified as Greenbelt Officer Albert Murray. He allegedly went to the room in question and left about an hour later. Police detained the woman Murray met up with, who reportedly admitted to posting an ad online for her companionship. She said she received a text from Murray asking about her rates and that he paid her $160 for her time, during which, of course, things happened. Murray was issued a criminal summons on suspicion of violating the state's prostitution laws and remains on administrative leave pending the outcome of his case. Number 4, Jamar Lee. Early one morning in 2020, Officer Jamar Lee spotted a car sitting at the drive-thru window of a closed donut shop in Lauderhill, Florida. The woman in the vehicle, Sierra Parrish, said she was homeless and trying to catch the Wi-Fi signal on her tablet so she could ask her sister for some money or a place to stay. She later claimed that when she was rummaging around in her back seat for her driver's license, Lee shined a flashlight under her dress, made an inappropriate noise, and grabbed her, something he would adamantly deny to his superiors and in court when he was fired from his job and hit with charges for unlawful compensation and battery. According to Parrish, Lee said that her license and tags were expired and told her to follow his car to a location where there were other officers. Instead, she claimed he led her into a dark alley and propositioned her in a way that suggested he wanted her to perform a favor in exchange for not being taken into custody. Parrish said that she suggested meeting at another location just so she could create an opportunity to get away from him. While they were driving, she saw him make a right turn, so she turned left and went to her ex-boyfriend's apartment, where she called the police. Lee argued in court that he told Parrish he could either have her car towed or have someone come and get it, and that he never threatened to take her to jail. In fact, he claimed he felt sorry for her, and that she asked him for money during their conversation, but he failed to turn his body cam on during the exchange, which was unusual. His defense attorney pointed out how Parrish never mentioned Lee grabbing her or making a comment about wanting intimacy during footage of her police interview. And during cross-examination, she admitted that Lee never threatened to take her to jail. She also admitted that she looked into suing him for $300,000. All things considered, Lee's lawyer suggested that the allegations against his client were nothing more than a shakedown for cash. Much to Lee's relief, he was acquitted of the charges, but said he was unsure whether he would try to get his job back. Number 3, Andrew Lawson. Best friends Andrew Lawson and Austin Welsh lived together and both worked as sheriff's deputies in Brevard County, Florida. During a break from playing video games at their apartment in Palm Bay one Saturday night in 2022, Lawson jokingly pointed his weapon at Walsh, believing it was unloaded, but it wasn't, and he accidentally shot his buddy. According to an arrest report, Lawson pulled the trigger on his Glock 34 9mm pistol, then pulled the slide back and pulled the trigger a second time. The bullet struck Walsh in the face and killed him. Lawson immediately dialed 911 and admitted to what happened. Emergency responders later described him as fully devastated and distraught upon their arrival at the scene. And although investigators seemed to believe the killing was accidental, Lawson's reckless behavior landed him a manslaughter charge. In a video uploaded to Facebook, Sheriff Wayne Ivey described the accident as totally dumb and unavoidable. Lawson's alleged conduct also contradicts some of the most basic tenets of safe gun use and law enforcement training. Professional police consultant and use of force expert Roy Bedard told Florida Today that it's a cardinal rule not to point a gun or an object that could possibly be a gun at anyone, ever, unless the intention is to shoot them. If convicted, Lawson could face up to 15 years in prison. Number 2, Kesha Richberg. EMT Kevin Jeter was at the scene of a shooting in Atlanta in 2019 when a bystander handed him a wad of the victim's cash that they had gathered up off the ground. Jeter tucked the money, totaling an estimated $500, into the victim's wallet and handed it to the responding officer. The money vanished from the wallet after being given to the police. Body cam footage revealed that an officer named Kesha Richberg put the wallet in her car along with the victim's cell phone. The video also reportedly showed that the money was missing from the wallet before she passed it along to a homicide sergeant. Richberg was accused of stealing the $500 after the victim's wife posted on Facebook about the missing money from the wallet and connected with the bystander who had gathered the bills and given them to the first responders. An investigation was launched and Richberg was fired. Number 1, Humas Khan. In an incident described by their police chief as embarrassing, Washington, D.C. officers Humas Khan and Jarita Millington were accused of drag racing in their patrol cars while on duty in 2021. According to records, the vehicles reached speeds of nearly 50 miles per hour within 0.2 of a mile and ran over 3 speed bumps before Millington lost control of her car. The vehicles crashed into each other, causing one to spin out of control and into a fence. Court documents describe the scene of the drag race as a winding road with limited visibility that runs through a residential neighborhood with a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. Between both cars, damages were estimated at nearly $22,000. Khan was still in his probationary period when the incident occurred and was immediately fired afterward, while Millington was put on limited duty pending the outcome of an internal investigation. They were both criminally charged with 3 offenses, including aggravated reckless driving, and agreed to identical plea deals that involved admitting to a reduced charge of reckless driving. As part of the agreement, they each paid a $100 fine and contributed $250 to a victim's fund.
Would you rather have your new car stolen and crashed by a suspect fleeing from a crime scene, or spend 2 weeks with an escaped inmate at large in your area? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.